Well, he's certainly meddling, trying to steer the economy towards this, so-called green economy and so on. I mean, that's not an efficient way to run an economy. Shouldn't the market decide what's best for the economy?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I had the privilege of attending and speaking at a meeting of the Australian Shareholders Association up in the north of Tasmania earlier this week. And I think it's a great example of civic engagement in these types of discussions. And one of the key roles of the ASA is to keep Australian listed companies accountable, kind of feedback from actual shareholders, to be active voices in what otherwise can become, I think, quite unaccountable, big organisations. And I think, like most, independent retirees, people that are thinking about how they actually get their investments working for them properly, the key consideration, obviously, is, does the actual financial case make sense from a budget perspective? Does the budget make sense from an investment perspective? What is the risk reward? And I think that even the degree to which ethical investment decisions are increasing, I think, in terms of the awareness of the broader public, and certainly the conversations that I'm having with clients. Nevertheless, that doesn't take a backseat to the actual financial performance, which then gives people the options, which actually supports their retirement, which actually helps people address some of the issues that their treasurer raised, and actually provides the money in the budget that we make the decisions around. So I think, I think increasingly there is an overlap, and probably I would describe an overreach in terms of some of these value-based ethical considerations, and potentially it's the tail wagging the dog in that sense. But
yeah, what was the mood like at that meeting of shareholders, the Australian Shareholders Association, about the preoccupation that a lot of listed companies have these days with ESG, with green and sort of woke policies or directions?
Yeah, I think, and this is probably something that you'd see as well, Fred, is that most Australians, I think, are fairly pragmatic people with real values. And I think there's the thing that we probably resent more is the more patronising language that often bureaucracies and governments can have when they're talking to the public. We're obviously interested in good governance, sustainable businesses, and the environmental impact that we have. But ultimately, I think there's a question of, and certainly, both from a performance of listed companies and the government, its legislative agenda, do we actually have practical common sense decision makers at the helm who understand the trade-off and the tensions that we need to maintain to actually get good outcomes, broad social outcomes, not just ideological outcomes? Or do we have more bureaucratic, more ideological discussion happening than there really ought to be?
Yeah, I think the main thing that Chalmers, and he's not alone, but people like Chalmers misunderstand is what are the principles that made this country what it is today. I mean, personal freedom, choice, responsibility, and a common set of moral values. They don't get a mention in Chalmers' essay, and I don't think they're considered much when he formulates these policies, don't you?
Yeah, look, I agree with that, and I think that probably reveals some of the undertones of what's actually being said. Because I think, like you, I particularly with the Treasurer's approach has been personal, relatable, and I think certainly his essay was the same, and that's obviously appreciated. But I think often in this day and age, there's a degree to which you need to read between the lines and the subtext of what's being said, and then the action that follows off the back of that. And I think, even if we reflect on some of the things that have been impacting in my world as proposed changes to the superannuation balances of over $3 million. And I think it starts to show that the government is looking for areas to, raise taxes where they can. And that's probably creating a certain insecurity in certainly people that I have discussions with.